So welcome you all, and thank you, Han, for being willing to be asked some questions here and entertain this conversation. And thank you, Conrado, for organizing this series of encounters. Well, it's not difficult to introduce Han because, especially in this city, he's a well-known collector, benefactor, and everybody knows his generosity. Han Nefkens, he is actually supporting two foundations. One is Art AIDS, and the other one is a foundation that bears his own name, the Han Nefkens Foundations. Han Nefkens, he's been distinguished for supporting all kind of actions in promoting awareness and knowledge about AIDS. And his collection, I would say, or his actions in terms of collecting and supporting different institutions all over the world are always oriented towards the knowledge and awareness of AIDS. So today, in order to start the conversation with Han, I would like to focus on three basic ideas, Han, if you like. I mean, you can actually, if you want to know more about his activities, you can actually visit MACBA right now, and there is a beautiful show by Iman Issa, Egyptian artist, who was awarded the Han Nefkens Prize, which is coordinated and introduced by MACBA. But you can also watch a wonderful video piece by Zhu Tao, a piece that represents, follows the rebels, the protests in Thailand, a piece that recently won the Oberhausen Award and which is currently on view at the Cercle del Liceu in a show entitled Video Regime that I had the pleasure to curate, and it is an enterprise and an idea, a project undertaken by Loop in order to represent the work, the efforts of video collectors all over in Spain, and Han counts among them. Han, I would really like to begin this conversation by focusing on this very open activist attitude you kind of, give to all your actions, your collection, your support also to the production of new work. Because, I mean, Han is one of those collectors who likes to intervene almost right at the start of the conception of a work. In the interview we had for this little booklet where like about 15 collectors were interviewed, Han actually said that he likes to be there right from the very beginning of the life of this new baby. And then, curiously enough, he rarely holds the property of the work at home or in a private place. He instantly gives or loans the work to institutions, which is remarkable to say that these institutions are worldwide. I mean, he's especially generous with the city of Barcelona because he lives here, and we consider him like what I like to call a one-man institution. I mean, if Han Nefkens ever decided to leave Barcelona, we would really miss him very much. But please, let's tackle the first of the ideas, and I would like to dwell a little bit on that side, on your activist side.
Okay, well, you said I would like to be there with the birth of the baby. Well, quite frankly, I'd like to be there during the intercourse because
Good, that's new.
I commission works. So often together with museums, we get together with the artist and start talking about, first of all, the possibility of commissioning a work. So there isn't even an idea yet. That idea will be born when we tell the artist that the possibility is there, and then the artist will come back to us with a proposal of what he or she wants to do, and then we agree on this proposal or something else. Before I continue, I want to say that not all my work is focused on HIV or AIDS. It's only the work of Art AIDS, The idea of Art AIDS is to create awareness about HIV and particularly to break the stigma by commissioning artists. All these artists are not affected by HIV, to make a work inspired by HIV and AIDS. So the first awareness starts with the artists who start to think about HIV, which they probably didn't before. And then, of course, the works are shown. So we have the public, but we also have the media. And one of the things that, to me, is very important is that the audience, people, talk about HIV. Because we have an exhibition, it's on the agenda again, which nowadays it isn't so much. And that helps to talk about it, and talking about it helps to break the stigma. So this is one of my activities, but then there's the other, the Han Nefkens Foundation. And the idea of the Han Nefkens Foundation is to help production of art, and also literature and fashion. But not only that. I talked a little bit about it earlier today. To me, the great pleasure of doing what I'm doing is really bringing people together. And when I produce a work, I put the artist in contact with the curators, with the museum, with the public. We travel to different places where the artist meets, again, another environment. And I think Zhao Tao is a very good example of that. Zhao Tao is the winner of the award I have at the Bangkok Art Center in Thailand. And his work was shown a year ago. We work with this award in Thailand, but also here in Barcelona and all the different projects I have, with a series of scouts that we have in different parts of the world. So, for example, the Bangkok Award is focused on Asia, so we have scouts in Asia. The one here in Barcelona is focused on the Mediterranean area, and of course the Arab world forms part of that. So we have about 10 scouts in different areas. Each scout brings in 3 candidates, 3 people that the scouts thinks are deserving the award and will be helped with the exposure and the possibility to produce work. We do a pre-selection, and then we have an international jury that selects the winner. And then, based on that, the artist can produce a work. Well, Zhao Tao is a good example of an artist that was unanimously chosen to be the winner, and he produced a work in Bangkok, which obviously I'm not at all objective, but is of a poetic beauty and a strength and a depth that is really moving. And I'm very happy that I'm not the only one who thinks so, because as you mentioned, he won the prize of Best Short Film in Oberhausen. And this touches right away a little bit on, again, this dividend of doing what I do. The process of being in touch with artists, of helping to make something possible that might not have been possible otherwise, is really what gives me great satisfaction. But then, of course, when the artist gets this kind of recognition, as in Oberhausen, and I must say with Iman Issa as well, because everybody reacts so positively to her exhibition, makes me feel very good. You know, this is, we've all been doing something together because, and that's one of the other pleasures, you all work together on something, on making a piece of art and showing it. And I was thinking about that this morning. You know, we were going to talk, and I was sort of thinking, okay, what shall I say? Because, of course, I've talked before about my work, and then I sort of feel I always have to repeat the same story, and, you know, sharing, and we've heard it before. It's very true. You know, it's so important, and having a social function, and that's, of course, also very important, but it's not the only thing. I was thinking that the beauty of doing what I'm doing and what the other people are doing is the feeling that you become part of something bigger. And that's not, I'm not talking about something very sophisticated, I'm just talking about doing something together. And so, the pleasure of doing that. And I thought, so why is it so nice to be part of something bigger? Why? What is the attraction of that? And I thought, actually, the attraction is that you get rid of this I in your head that's constantly talking, that's constantly commenting on everything you do. If you made a right decision, if you shouldn't have done it better. Well, we all know this voice in our head that keeps on talking and just doesn't show up. Shut up. Now, being involved with other people, doing something else, is one of the few times that voice in my head stops, because I'm completely focused on something else. As it were, I become one with all these other people. And it really sounds like I'm talking about drugs now, but I guess that's what it is.
No, but actually, I mean, the way you work, I mean, it looks like you're using video as a virus.
Mm-hmm.
As a virus that disseminates, proliferates, and is contagious.
Yeah.
It is contagious because it brings enthusiasm forth and to be shared with people. And as you said, works like Zautao, I mean, it is an activism based on a heavy aesthetic sort of presentation, and someone may think, maybe this is not the right way. Believe me, I mean, it's the very interesting way of putting together like aesthetic interests and political concerns. So, yeah, I mean, this is a great line of discussion, but then I would like also to comment on a very particular aspect. When you say that you like to intervene in the production right at the intercourse moment, at the climax, what about, I mean, how do you feel about circumventing the market by just intervening in the work before anyone else mediates? Because we are in an art fair, and and somebody may be wondering how. I mean, this way of behaving, this behavior, this sort of extreme generosity, it's great for Han, but what about for the market? I mean, how do you deal with that?
Yes, I think video in that sense is a very good solution because there are so many editions. And the way we work is that, for example, with Zhao Tao, the edition that he makes, it's an edition of 6. The first edition goes to the Bangkok Art Center. Oh. And the other editions he can sell, part of the market. And so apart from that, I don't think I have anything to do with it. That's part of the artist and his gallery. They can go ahead, and it would be wonderful for them if they can sell it. But I'm not concerned about it because I'm not in it as an investment to make money. I'm in it as an investment for pleasure, and I'm getting that. And money is not my concern with art. I think that is not because I am so incredibly above material goods and I'm so removed from that. Not at all. I try to make my money in a different way, but not with art, because I think that would be very confusing considering my awards and my scholarships, and imagine that I would also be buying and selling at the same time. People would be very suspicious. They'd say, oh, Han is putting all of this up to get better of it. And so I don't get involved in that at all.
Right. Given the global reach of your activities, of your enterprises or your awards, support, etc., would you be kind enough to share with us, I mean, what's your global map of your activity? I mean, why do you focus on Asia? Why do you live in Barcelona? Why are you so fond of Dutch institutions? I mean, it is an interesting global map that I would like you to sort of, go through and share with us.
Yes, I think that with many things in life, they happen, and then afterwards you sort of put a theory behind it or a thought why you were so smart to make this decision or the other. But things often just happen because of coincidence. I ended up in Thailand because in 2003 the International AIDS Conference was held there, and a good friend of mine was the president of the International AIDS Foundation, and I said I would like art to be part of the AIDS conference, and that's what happened. Had the AIDS conference been in South Africa, which it was before that, I would have become active in South Africa. If it had been in Peru, I would have been active in Peru. So it was just a coincidence. And I ended up in Bangkok, and of course I went often to prepare for the conference and the exhibitions that we had there. And I met artists, and I got involved in AIDS projects there as well. So I had to go more and more often, and I met more people, and there were more opportunities to do things. So things happen in an organic way. With Barcelona, I don't know if I can say that that is the same, because of course you make a decision to live in a place, and if you don't like it, you leave. Right? And I fell in love with Barcelona. I hope it's not unrequited love. And I decided to stay and do things here. And of course, since I'm Dutch, I also want to work with Dutch institutions as well.
Well, it's an interesting triangle, but anyway, I mean, let's not forget that video is kind of the common ground most and often. I mean, yeah, you also support other kind of work, which is not necessarily video, like Iman Issa's sculptures, Lawrence Wiener, public sculpture here in the Santa Caterina market, etc. But video seems to be an ideal media to actually circulate ideas. And as I said before, I mean, why not consider video almost like a virus, similarly as Laurie Anderson used to say, language is a virus, or William Burroughs. But, I mean, video is kind of a convenient media for the kind of global scale you want to intervene.
First of all, I like the fact that you call video art a virus, because, of course, virus has such a negative connotation for people like me living with HIV. So it's very nice to do something where a virus has a positive connotation. On the other hand, video is so easy to transport. You have a copy and you send it to all sorts of places, and it's not so difficult to show it. It's not so expensive, so that makes it very easy to be a nomad and show the video in different parts of the world. With exhibition of artworks, the problem is always the tremendous cost of transportation and insurance as well, and that's a big obstacle. And for the money that you would pay for transporting an exhibition from one place to the other, you could commission 10 video works. So, yes, much more opportunity that way.
You actually sound a little bit like those collectors from the early 70s that were also so enthusiastic about conceptual art, because it could be transported via telephone, telegrams, letters, postcards, etc. And it actually promoted a great moment in the art world, you know, I mean, transforming many people who were just interested in art into collectors. And it made it possible for the people to travel a lot. What do you think is the particularity now, I mean, at this moment, that I would like to call it like a second globalization wave? I mean, what would be the difference in respect to the 70s?
One thing is that everybody is aware of what's going on in the rest of the world. You just open your email, your internet, and you know what's happening in Pakistan at the moment, in India, in South America. Everybody is aware of that, and somehow we can even communicate with people there through WhatsApp and emails. Secondly, also because of internet, things are becoming much more multidisciplinary. We have access now to so many different disciplines. You know, you're interested in video, but then all of a sudden you start looking at different sites about videos, and then all of a sudden you end up in a site about sustainability, or you end up in a site about Indian communities in Mexico, and then you end up in a site about quantum physics somehow. And you absorb all these kind of things, and that's what you find back in the work of artists, also video artists, that it's no longer about one thing. It's really about, as you say, global. It's holistic in that sense, without sounding very philosophical.
Yeah, and it makes it possible to share contents without the necessity to own them, or, you know, to back them with heavy logistics.
Yes, and that was something that Aga said earlier this morning, that the younger generation now is not so interested in owning things anymore. You know, if they want to get from one place to the other, whichever medium they find, whichever transportation is okay, but they don't have to have a car, and they don't have to own a house, and it gives them an incredible freedom and flexibility as well to do so many other things and to be not tied up to the possessions that you have, because possessions can really be a burden as well.
Mhm. Yeah, so video is kind of announcing a new communism based on, I dare to say that the other day, you know, but I mean, the idea is that video is actually presenting a kind of paradoxical coexistence of different forms of property in
Yeah.
terms of collections, you know? I mean, you can actually have access to all this work without owning it. You can share it through
Yeah.
different networks, and at the same time, you can actually put money in it, you know, pay for it. And as you said, I mean, this money, we should begin to conceive it not as a kind of a title or as a kind of a property deed, but rather like the idea that you are intervening in the production. You are kind of boosting up the process, you know, supporting it. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your passion about fashion? Because fashion is, again, one of those fields where, which is based on the imitation, contagion, and I would dare to say again that it's also a different form of a virus. You know, something you like to share, something you like to imitate. How come you're so passionate about
Yes,
fashion?
you keep on asking me why this, why that, and then I'm not really stupid, so I can give you a very interesting answer.
You're doing
and, then
very well.
and then everybody thinks,
You're doing
oh, this
great.
Han Nefkens, he's a really bright person because he knows exactly what he does, and he goes right away to it. It's not at all that way. You stumble on things, it's
Right.
pure coincidence, and then you're interested with it, and you make the best of it, and the same with fashion. Again, I have to go back to the AIDS conference in Bangkok in 2003, where I was to show art. And in the conference center, which is huge, there was an installation of condom dresses by a Brazilian artist, 7 condom dresses. And from afar, you saw very colorful works, but you weren't quite sure what it was. And only when you came closer, you saw that it was condoms in different colors. And I thought, this is really interesting. So I bought them. And I sent them to the Centraal Museum. I was working with them at the time. And I asked the fashion curator if she was interested in them and could do something with it. And she made a very beautiful exhibition. So I bought them on a whim, really. I thought, this is different. They were cheap as well. So I thought, why not buy them and send them to Utrecht? And then José Teunissen, the fashion curator, was able to show them in a dark space with lighting. And then you saw these condoms in almost like 3-dimensional with all these different colors. And for the first time I saw, well, this is fashion, but it's also something different. It's art, and at the same time, in this case, it has a social meaning, condoms, safe sex. This is really very interesting. And in order to show them, she said, well, we have to buy a couple of dolls to put them on. 4 dolls. They had 3, and they asked me to buy 4. So I said, being Dutch, I said, now I have these dolls. It would be a waste if I didn't do anything with them, so we'll have to continue. And we have to think of a project to do something else with these dolls. And that's how it happened. And so this was a very small presentation based on a whim of mine. And it ended up being something much, much bigger. Last year we had a big exhibition in the Museum Boijmans van Beuningen, The Future of Fashion Is Now, where I commissioned 6 fashion designers from different countries to make a work. 50 other works were shown. The exhibition will most probably travel. So it has become something much bigger, but there was never in my mind when I started in 2003 this idea, I'm going to make something big, or it happened.
Do you think, Han, that video and fashion are media which can be regarded as being closer to social innovations than other forms of art practice?
Yeah, and they work together very well. We are preparing a presentation in Holland now of a work I bought with, from Victor and Rolf. And only a couple of days ago we were thinking, okay, how are we going to show this work? We always, you put the works there, and it's always a little bit the same. So I thought, why don't we do something else? Why don't we do something with video? And now we're thinking about that. So that's how these things get born. It's not, it's intuition, it's enthusiasm, it's passion as well, and then it sort of goes its own way.
Yeah, great. Let me shift to a different kind of questions. Even though you constantly speak from kind of a disinterested position, out of enthusiasm, out of your will, your whim, your passion, but you have become an extremely necessary figure, at least in this city, and I imagine in other places and institutions. Given the harsh conditions for public institutions, we need more and more people like you. I mean, we can no longer go ahead with the traditional idea of an institution 100% subsidized publicly. So how do you see your role at this moment?
Again, I could give a very interesting talk about what my role could be, but I ended up...
What's your role now?
Yeah, I ended up doing
you...
these kind of things, and I do them because I like them. It's so much fun. It's so nice to work with artists. It's such a wonderful feeling when, like, the exhibition of Iman Issa is there and people see it. This is why I do it. And talking again about going viral and contagion people, that's what I would like to do. I would like to tell people, it's so much fun. If you have the opportunity to do it and to be involved, do it. It's nice.
No, and I totally agree that institutions do not only require like finance capital in order to survive, they also require other forms of capital, cognitive capital, emotional interest from the public. So you seem to be like one of those necessary figures articulating like financial support, enthusiasm, ideas, and how do you see these new institutions which are now by necessity opening the doors to people like you, and you know what I mean, will these institutions become meeting points for different forms of capital, namely money, enthusiasm, knowledge, interest, research?
This is all very new, of course.
Exactly, that's what I want you to talk
both
about.
Both in Holland and in Spain, institutions have been so used to receiving subsidies and then working with them, and all of a sudden it was cut and they were told, now you have to go to private sources. Well, there was no structure for that at all. Nobody, what private sources? How do you do that? How do you work with them? Nobody knew it, but everybody was left on their own to go out and experiment. I had the advantage of having started this 15 years ago. So I have experience with working with public institutions, and I must say that that's really because of the vision of the first director I worked with, Charles X, who was then the director of the Centraal Museum and now of the Museum Boijmans van Beuningen. That was unheard of in Holland, that a private person became in this way involved with art. It's not subsidizing, it's really collaborating in such a way that what moves me will be shown in the museums. And there are many different facets to it. And of course there's also a lot of criticism. Who is this Han Nefkens trying to put his stamp on the museum? Who does he think he is? And Charles was brave enough, I think, to start. And I think he's a little bit like me in the sense that we'll do it and we'll see what happens. And it went very well. And then of course the crisis happened. I worked with him for 10 years. There was hardly any interest from the media. There was hardly any interest from anybody about what we're doing. And all of a sudden the crisis hits. The government says, now museums, you have to go out and find private people. And of course everybody said, well, they couldn't find that many. So everybody said, oh, this Han Nefkens is doing nice things. Well, you know, again, pure coincidence. It's not because of something bright I did. It's just because of the circumstances. And now we have to deal with it. And again, the structure isn't really there yet. And I think it's a very important point to start working on that. I think we should really come together institutions
Indeed.
and private people and think about the way we could collaborate together, and in such a sense that it's on an, I'm Dutch of course, on an egalitarian base. We always want to be equal in Holland, and I think in this sense it's very important. I don't think that the person who has the money should say, because I have the money, I can say how things should be done. I think it has to be a collaboration where everybody feels comfortable, and we have to start thinking about that.
Great. I also think so. I think it's ripe for opening the floor to the audience to ask questions or comment. Yeah. Tasneem?
Yes, thank you so much for this interesting conversation. I'm absolutely fascinated by your AIDS collection, really. You've said that many things you do are organic and happen, but this is something obviously you decided that art could be a way to bring greater understanding of what is an incredibly complex issue. Now, would you be able to say what, it's very difficult, it's maybe an unfair question, but would you be able to say what you felt you had achieved through this?
I don't think it's an unfair question at all. I think it's a very logical question. And it's a question I ask myself as well, of course, because putting up an exhibition, we had one here in Barcelona in October, Perfect Lovers at the Fundación Suñol, putting up an exhibition costs money. At the same time, there are countries in the world where people with HIV don't get medication because there's no money. So, you know, it's a very valid question. Is it a good idea to put up an exhibition, or should it be much wiser to use that money to buy medication for people in different countries? Well, I have a project where I do that because I would like to get some kind of balance. But I think what I have achieved, I can only give you an example. When we had an exhibition at the Fundación Miro, there was a book there where people who visited could write their comments. And most comments were like usual with exhibitions, a great exhibition, wonderful, etc., etc. But there was one comment, and it read, "I have HIV, and because of having seen this exhibition, I finally have the courage to tell my family that I'm living with HIV." And I thought, this is why we do it. So I don't know if I've answered your question by that, but...
Yes, I mean, I suppose, I'm sorry if I...
Go ahead.
In a place like Barcelona, it's more possible, but I suppose, you know, because of what you talk about, the stigma, etc., associated with it, would one do a similar sort of exhibition in other places, say in Africa or Asia?
Yeah, we did. We had an exhibition in Africa, and of course in Thailand we had an exhibition. So yes, and I think it's very valid, but it is very difficult to set up an exhibition in countries like in Africa, like Senegal, for example, where we were, from Barcelona or for France, for wherever we're working, because it's so complicated. You really have to be on the ground to do that. It also becomes quite expensive because works have to be transported again, except for, of course, for the videos. That's why we use a lot of videos. Yes, I think it's a very valid option, but it's complicated.
There's another question down there.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, I really appreciated what you said at the beginning about almost, it sounded to me quite a spiritual thing to say, about a loss of sense of yourself and ego and getting lost in that interdependent, interconnected nature. So I just wanted to ask to what extent, having HIV and also working in the arts, you have developed that philosophy almost as a result of that?
Yes.
And if it is a spiritual approach through your work, it seemed quite akin with some Buddhist and Hindu traditions of Asia.
Yes, that's very true, because I found out that I had HIV when I was 33 years old, and that's not a time in your life when people start wondering about the end of your life. When you're 33 years old, you start, you have all sorts of ideas, and you feel that it will go on for ages. And all of a sudden, I was confronted with the fact that that's not the case, and you start thinking in a different way. Accumulating possessions is not your first priority when you have the idea that you're only going to live for a couple of years more. What you want to do is do something valuable with the time you have left. And I think that was the beginning. And then while doing the work I did, I found this great satisfaction in connecting with other people, in being involved in the same thing with other people, and getting this kind of satisfaction. So in that sense, HIV has, it's a tough thing. It's not something I recommend, but it has helped to give me a different focus on life that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Any more questions, comments? Well, if there are no questions, I'd like to ask you, what are you working on now? I mean,
a lot of things.
you are also a writer.
Yes,
and, you
yes.
also spend a lot of your energies in the writing.
Yes, I also write, but I would like to mention the things that people can experience pretty soon, because experiencing a new book by mine might take a little while, and people might not be so patient about that. But on the 1st of July, we have the opening of an exhibition by a Mexican artist, Santiago Borja, at the Mies van der Rohe Pavilion. Santiago Borja is one of the artists who's going to be in residence. I have a residency program with the idea of bringing artists from other countries, preferably non-Western countries, to Barcelona to give them the chance to experience the city, which everybody loves, but also to give people from Barcelona the chance to see art that they might not see otherwise. Santiago Borja is a very interesting artist. I'm always very proud of the artists I work with, and I defend them, and if somebody criticizes them, I get really quite assertive about them. But Santiago Borja is a very interesting artist. He explores architecture, but at the same time he works with Indian communities in Mexico that he commissions to make textiles that he shows together with these architectural projects. So I'm confident that the one at the Mies van der Rohe Pavilion, which is such a beautiful architecture that lends itself so well to adding something else, this is going to be spectacular. We have the second Makba Award that was won by 3 Iranian artists. Agar talked about that before, how Iranian artists not living in Iran have the opportunity to do so much more than the ones that live there. They live in Dubai, and they work in a way that is a little bit the opposite of Iman Issa. It's rococo, it's quite over the top, and I think that would also be quite a breath of fresh air here in Barcelona when they come. And then I have several projects in Holland in September, and China.
So hopefully you get busy and we can share all your achievements. And let me say, I mean, if there's no more questions, I mean, thank you personally, and thank you also in the name of the city of Barcelona, because I mean, you have become so necessary.
Thank you very much, Carles. Thank you.